I'm delighted to have you with me. Prior to 72, there was some chaos in the Philippines, wasn't there? Or is that a...
Yes, there was a chaos in my country in 72, and the students were demonstrating. There were too many guns in the street, and Mr. Marcos used this as an excuse to declare martial law to restore peace and order.
Well, now, you ran as the candidacy for the presidency.
No, the presidential election was coming in 73.
73,
yes.
Okay.
You see, Mr. Marcos was elected in 65, and under the Philippine Constitution, our president cannot go beyond 8 years, and therefore he had to step out in 1973. Unfortunately, he declared martial law, and the Constitution was suspended, and he's been in power since then.
You were the leader of the opposition. Did you ever run for anything against him?
No, I am only one of the leaders of the opposition,
Okay.
Pat, and there are many leaders in my country. I ran for the Senate, and I was a member of the minority party in the Senate. I was to seek the presidential nomination in 73. However, that was aborted, and we never got to that stage.
So you were unable to do what you were planning
right.
to do. Why were you imprisoned and put in solitary confinement?
Well, the charge against me was subversion. Mr. Marcos accused me of trying to overthrow the government. Of course, I tried to overthrow him through the ballot, through a legal way. But he charged me with subversion and illegal possession.
That's like the Republicans putting the Democratic contender into prison for trying to overthrow them, and vice versa, each election.
That would be an analogy, yes.
You were trying through the ballot box to win the presidency.
He accused me of trying to talk to all of the subversives in the country. And I told him I was a center of the Republic, and I had to talk to every Filipino, whether they're subversive or not. I mean, I had to interview them, I had to talk to them and find out what's wrong with the country. And he accused me of fraternizing with all of these people.
Well, was this in court? Did you go to trial?
Yes, he brought me before a military tribunal. I refused to defend myself because I'm a civilian. All the civil courts are open and functioning, and the Supreme Court says that the judicial authority of our country, I mean, the Constitution said all judicial authority is with the Supreme Court. So why should I, a civilian, stand trial before a military tribunal created by Mr. Marcos under his command and under his discretion? So I simply refused. After 5 years of refusal, they decided to sentence me to death by firing squad.
Are you going to stay in the United States, or are you going back?
No, I'd like to go back to my country because that's where my people are, and they're suffering, and therefore I must join them.
Tell me about your relationship with the Lord in this solitary thing. Something unusual happened spiritually to you.
Well, you know, I'm a Catholic. I was born a Catholic, and 85% of the Filipino people are Christians, as you know that. But we never really read the Bible as Catholics. I don't know why. And we were instinctively Catholic. We believed in God. But as a young man, I had no time for God. I was too busy with my politics. I was moving on, and I thought I was self-contained. I thought, you know, on my own steam, I can make it. I only went to God when I needed His help, when the votes were coming in, and I'd say, "Dear Lord, help me." But when the votes are in, I forget the Lord. But when I was placed in deep solitary confinement, nobody to talk to, I became desperate. And here I started to question the fundamentals of my belief. Firstly, is there really a God? I began to doubt that. I said, if there is a God, why should I be here? What have I done? Why are the crooks all out? And so I asked the second question, was there a God when the children were gassed at Auschwitz, at Buchenwald, at Dachau? Where was He? Where is this God? And people are dying in the Sahel. And that was the doubt that assailed my mind. But then I felt there must be a God, because then all of this suffering will be useless. I mean, if I'm suffering like this and there's no God, who will ever reward me? Who will ever pay me back? So there must be a God. So I felt then, maybe it's a fool's consolation, I had to even invent Him if there is no God, because that's the only way you can survive. Without Him, Pat, you'll never make it. And as St. Paul said, I'm strongest when I was weakest.
Yes.
And I became strongest when I was down there on the floor, in solitary confinement, alone, and it's only when He came to me that I really felt strongest. And therefore now, I have survived all of my vicissitudes because I know that there's this God interceding for us. And you know, I said, Chuck, I want to make a confession too. God gave me a gift, I said, a gift to articulate that brought me to the pinnacle of political power. I promised Him in prison, I said, that if and when I regain my freedom, I'd like to use this gift now to witness for Him. And look, I'm here, Pat. I mean, a year ago, who would ever believe that I would be sitting down with you? I was watching you. I was in solitary confinement and the death sentence. Now I'm here with you. And this is a miracle. I mean,
is a miracle.
you know, it's one of those things.
And the suffering did something, though. The suffering opened your understanding of God that you never would have had otherwise.
Well, Pat, suffering can do two ways. It can break you or make you.
All right.
In my particular instance, I welcomed it as an opportunity. With this suffering, I knew that God cared for me. Because if He didn't care for me, He won't make me suffer. But I knew that when He gave me this suffering in solitary confinement, away from my children, they would come in the afternoon and visit me once a week. And when they left, you know, my heart would be broken. But it's only then that I really realized the value of my children. God had to take them away for me to realize that value.
Sure.
So I think the message is, welcome your suffering, because God will never give you a suffering that will break you. It's only a manifestation of His love, I think, that He makes us suffer to really realize Him. Because when we are in glory, we don't know Him. But when we suffer, we remember Him. So I think that's the message.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo sa 500 ni Ninoy. Mahigit sa 500 na organisasyon, institusyon at individual ang sama-samang aalalahanin ang kwento ng sakripisyo, pagmamahal sa bayan at kabayanihan ni Ninoy Aquino sa live stream ng The Last Journey of Ninoy.
So, what are the immediate implications of that? Number one, maybe there's a real assassination group that trying to scare me. And if I back out, then they'll come out in the headlines and say, he got scared about the assassins. If I insist on coming home and I get shot, then they can always say, now look, we told you there was an assassination plot, and you insisted, so don't blame us.
I am going back to the Philippines, and if I have to go back to jail, so be it. I've always said that Mr. Marcos is the original terrorist. He is right now employing state violence. If we use violence against him, he will only justify the use of more violence against us. And since he's a more violent man, he has more forces of repression, we will be the loser. Because if you're not violent, then before the bar of public opinion and before God, he's the only sinner.
I have proclaimed martial law in accordance with the powers vested in the President by the Constitution of the Philippines.
On that day, democracy died.
I grew up in New Manila. Every afternoon, I would bike kasama ng mga street boys until dinner time. Palagi akong nakabuntot kay Papa. He was always attending to the needs of the people. I knew then I wanted to be in public service like him.
You know, he lost his father when he was 15, so he felt he had to do something on his own to show that, I suppose that because he loved his father very much, and he wanted people to know that he took a lot after his father and that he was willing to risk many things. He was blessed with many talents. He wasn't a student in the real sense of the word. He read, but he did not read probably the books that were meant to be read in school.
When I was 17, I joined the Manila Times. My job was to run errands for the newsmen. I'd pick up and deliver copies for them. I read and read and read what they wrote and learned to write on my own. Soon, they needed somebody to cover the Korean War. Siyempre, nagpresenta ako. I hop on the next military plane for Korea.
Ninoy took risks. Well, starting, I guess, when he went to Korea, when he was only 17. There was a great danger that he could be killed there or injured, but he wanted to do something different, something unusual for a 17-year-old.
President Ramon Magsaysay, who I met during my days at Manila Times, asked me to broker the surrender of Communist leader Luis Taruc. Taruc has been fighting the government for like 20 years. I acted on it immediately, and I was able to negotiate his surrender.
We never applied for a political asylum. And, Ninoy always told me, this is something very temporary, and eventually I'll have to go home. Ninoy said, if I don't go now, I will ask myself later on, I could have done something and I did not do anything, and I will blame myself forever. The night before he left, I really couldn't sleep, and it was August. He left August 13, so August 12. And August is a summer month, but in Boston, sometimes it gets cool, and sabi ko, Ninoy, I can't sleep, and I have chills. And sabi niya, Ninoy, I'm really worried. Sabi niya, Cory, we've talked about this for a long time. I know, and it's just that I wanted you to know how I feel. Before he left, sabi ko, Ninoy, can you tell me what possible scenarios there will be? Kasi, well, siguro when I get there, they'll arrest me and bring me to Fort Bonifacio again, or because I have had a triple bypass, baka na madali ako sa heart center, or then again, they might put me under house arrest, and then they could also, parang, the last thing he said was, but if they make a mistake and they have me killed, then that's the best thing that will happen to me. Tapos I go, Ninoy naman, don't talk like, no, sabi niya gano'n, because I've always wanted to die for our country.
It is only instinctive for a man to look for his peace. And I debated with my mind, and I debated with myself, and I debated with my wife and my children whether I should go back to the arena of combat. I felt that I already earned my peace. I have done my best. I waited for 7 years and 7 months, and the Filipino people did not react. And they would even give me the impression that they loved their chain and their slavery. What can one man do if the Filipino people love their slavery? If the Filipino people have lost their voice and would not say no to a tyrant, what can one man do? I have no army, I have no following, I have no money. I only have my indomitable spirit.
Much as my family would have wanted to go home with me, I had to tell them no. Masyadong delikado. It will draw too much attention. Cory would have been the perfect travel partner, of course, but not under this circumstance.
Ours was not a perfect marriage, of course, but I believe that he brought out the best in me, and I think I brought out the best in him. Because Ninoy and I were one. We could rely on each other. That no matter what happened, he'd be there for me and I'd be there for him.
But 12 hours into the trip, I miss her terribly.
Everything just went according to Ninoy's plans. He ran for mayor when he was not yet even 23, which was the required age for running for a town mayor. He also loved people. He was such an extrovert. I was never for him going to politics, but he believed that was what he was meant to do, and so I was there to support him. He enjoyed being a politician. He enjoyed the crowds. He enjoyed giving speeches. And the people just loved him when he gave those speeches.
Pinoy Aquino has confirmed that one of the youngest.
Nung tumakbo ko sa Senado, ibang labanan. I had to reach out to the whole nation. I even used a chopper to make grand entrances. Kailangan talagang mag-gimmick.
It seemed to me that there was nothing that Ninoy could not handle. He had everything going his way, and that he had been able to plan his life, and things were really going on schedule. I told him one day, you're able to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning to fly to Manila to be a sponsor at the wedding, and you cannot attend your sons or your daughters, whatever. When Ninoy was in politics, he had no time. Everything was just related to how he can first be nominated and how he can become president. The big event that he was waiting for was the presidential elections in 1973. But lo and behold, I guess God had other plans.
He has created an atmosphere that breeds communism. He has done more harm to himself and to the country by doing this.
Ninoy felt that there should be a third alternative. Marcos used to say, if you don't choose me, this country will go to the communists.
What did Mr. Marcos do? If you read his pronouncement, he said there was anarchy in the street, there was a left and right rebellion, there was this and there was that. But there is only one reason, which he never said. He wanted to prolong his stay in Malacanang sapagkat napakasarap.
Marcos has now full control of the whole country as he has assembled modern.
Running for a third term. Don't you think that 2 terms is enough for any man?
Very quietly, Mr. Marcos started maneuvering to change our form of government from an American-type presidential system to a British-type parliamentary so that he can be elected as a deputy from Ilocos, become prime minister, and then stay on forever. That was the plan.
You have witnessed the events of the last year. We have fallen and we are falling back on our last line of defense. You are also witnesses to the patience that we have shown in the face of provocation. In the face of abuse and license, we have used or attempted to use persuasion. Now, the limit has been reached, for we are against the wall. We must now defend the Republic of the Philippines with this stronger power.
What is the cause for all of this struggle? Very succinctly, I believe that no man, how brilliant this man, can dictate the welfare or the direction of 48 million Filipinos. I vowed to myself that because you have elected me to the Senate and I gloried in its pomp, therefore it is now time that I must suffer the consequences of my act.
Hello, Dave. I'm at the airport and I cannot leave America without saying goodbye to you and expressing to you my deepest gratitude. Look, our prayers are always with you for your safety and success and freedom of the people, okay? Okay. Now, this is the latest statement that I can give you. Yeah. My source is Cardinal Sin. Yes. Number one, Marcos checked in at the kidney center. Yes. They did a test. He flunked all tests, and the conclusion was if they operate on him, it would be fatal. So he went back to the palace. He's no longer responding to medication, and he will have to be hooked up to the dialysis machine now more often. How he will last with that machine on, I don't know. Apparently, they are now moving to put in Imelda in effective control. Yeah. But it's a matter of time, so he wanted 3 weeks to collect his thoughts, write his memoir, complete his book, and most probably craft the final stages of his administration. He's a man now, terminal, he knows he's going, and that's the background that I'm coming in. Any indication from the U.S. side that there might be somewhat helpful or cooperative, or no, absolutely nothing? No indication, except that they're watching me. Of course. They're following all my steps. God be with you. Thank you. Pinoy, huh? Bye-bye.
My next stopover was Malaysia. I was invited by the Sultan of Johor, who was a close friend of mine. His son picked me up from Singapore, and I was brought across the border to Malaysia. I shared my plans with the Sultan and to some of his friends and allies who joined our meeting. He offered the southern back door to get me to the Philippines. I thanked him for the offer, but my plan was already in place to land in Manila.
I've ordered the arrest of those directly involved in the conspiracy to overthrow our duly constituted government by violence and subversion.
Ninoy had been arrested early morning of September 23, 1972, while they were having a meeting in the Hilton at the time. He called me on his radio phone. There were no cell phones at the time. And he said, Cory, pupunta ngayon ako sa krame. And I said, bakit? At saka mo na malalaman.
Mr. Marcos arrested together with us in the Senate most of the leaders in the Constitutional Convention. All of those opposing him went to jail with us.
It was really just so awful, and I thought, oh, this is just the beginning, and what's going to happen next?
And Mr. Marcos said, I declared martial law to save democracy. But by saving democracy, he killed it.
That was the beginning of a long detention period of 7 years and 7 months. In the beginning, it wasn't too bad. Like, every day we could visit for 1 hour. He was no longer in control of his life. And one man was deciding everything for us. And in the beginning, we were both well, maybe you could say we were complaining, why is this happening to us? Okay, we're not saints, but definitely we're not the big sinners that other people are. And yet, they're free to do their own thing, and here we are, having to suffer this.
And I often ask myself, bakit ka pa nagpapakahirap dito? In 73, a high official of the government asked me, endorse mo na lamang ang New Society ni Noy, ayos na, ilalabas na kita. When I refused, they advised me, sumulat ka na lang kay Marcos, ask for his forgiveness. O ano naman kakong kasalanan ko, siya nagkasala sa bayan, bakit akong hihingi ng tawad? I want to prove to Mr. Marcos that not only comfort and material things are the demands of the flesh, that there is an indomitable spirit that will be willing to take any sacrifices for our people.
What was going on in Ninoy's mind and heart was something not easily visible or felt by those who did not know him. But I could, in fact, sense the tremendous change, not only going on in his mind and heart, but also in mine.
One of the greatest problems of a prisoner is loneliness. For 7 years, I was not allowed to see the moon and the stars. There were days where they left me all alone by myself. I had no reading material. I had nothing. I was twiddling my thumb. I would walk and walk and walk across my room. Just a room of about 4 meters by 5 meters. Hoping that I'll get tired. And then when I get tired, I will fall asleep, knowing that tomorrow will be the same.
It was a learning process for him, learning to live in solitude and just being shut away from what the world was when he was such an extrovert.
Kang ganon, be practical. Talagang ganon Makibagay ka na napakalakas ka ng bagyo Ikaw lang ka mahihirapan diyan. Mag-isa ka diyan. Hindi balik ang ganon. Kung ayaw mo nang sumulat, tumawag ka na lang sa telepono, ibulong mo na lamang, ayos na. I would like to tell you that I was tempted in my almost 7,285 days in prison to do just that. I am only human. Ako po isang tao lamang. When my wife and children would visit me and they would leave me at dusk after 1 hour, I also would like to enjoy the embrace of my children and the peace of my home.
During his incarceration, where Ninoy had spent the most time with his children. Because before that, he was just so busy, and he would come home late at night, or maybe leave early in the morning, and the only time we had together with the children would be Sunday, because I made that a rule. Parang he felt a little guilty na when he had all the time, well, when he was free, he could not take them out, and here they were coming. And I said, oh, kalimutan na yun, anyway, they're happy to be with you. And I think it was February 23 of 1973 when we were told by the authorities in Fort Bonifacio that our visits to Ninoy had been suspended.
They brought me to a mountain hideout in the Sierra Madre and placed me in a box. I had only my brief and my t-shirt. I refused to eat because I thought they were poisoning me. There was nothing in the room, barely nothing. And I had nothing to do but twiddle my thumb. And for the first time in my life, I heard the ticking of every second, and I was counting every second into minutes. And as the minutes marched into hours, and the hours into days, and days into weeks, I knew what loneliness meant.
It was April 8 or April 7, the Supreme Court came out with this decision appealing to the authorities in Fort Bonifacio to allow Nena Diokna and me to visit our husbands. Colonel Ramos, who became General Ramos then. And he said, yes, we will take you to where they are. We couldn't tell anybody. Before leaving Makati, I passed by my parents' house and I told my father that makakabisita yata kami kay Ninoy pero hindi pa sinasabi kung saan. Then I told my younger sister, Pasi, sabi ko, Pasi, can you give me a tranquilizer? Dahil hindi ko alam kung sa kami dadalhin eh. Sige, ito. Then she gave me a tranquilizer, which I thought was similar to mine. So we went, and when we got to Fort Magsaysay, the lieutenant who accompanied us, Lieutenant Bueno, he was telling us that the Dioknos will go first, and then after 30 minutes, the Aquinos will go. So, nauna nga yung mga Diokno, and when they were coming out, nagulat kami dahil umiiyak yung mga daughters ni Nena. And we were surprised because alam naman na hindi naman iyakin yung mga Diokno. No? And so, my daughters were asking the Diokno girls, why, what happened? And you will know, sinabi nilang ganon. So, when we were ushered in, it was like a trapezoid. And so, of chicken wire. Then there was another, maybe 2 feet or 3 feet apart. So, we were told to stand there. Then Ninoy came. And he was standing also behind this chicken wire fence. And I could hardly recognize him because he had lost so much weight. And he kept holding onto his pants. Parang, later on, I found out that he had lost so much weight, he had to hold onto his pants because they had taken away his belt. And he had no eyeglasses. They had taken that away from him also. And what really made me feel so bad was when he saw us, he started to sob. It was the first time I saw Ninoy cry. And he said, akala ko hindi ko na kayo makikita.
And I want to tell you, my friends, until you have tasted this loneliness, you will not know what solitary confinement means.
When he was sobbing like that, my 3 older daughters, si Bol, si Pinky, and Vel, started crying also. Then he said, I don't know if this will be the last time I'll see you. And then I remember Bol said, no, Dad, don't worry, our luck is changing. I had never seen Ninoy, but ready to give up and really so helpless, which he never was before. And I was saying, hindi Ninoy, basta magdasal na lang tayo. Then he thought of, ganito na lang, every 8 o'clock at night, you pray the rosary and also pray the rosary. So at that time, at least we know that we are praying for each other. Sabi ko, sige, maganda nga yun. What was very surprising, and this is what Ninoy later on wrote in his diary, that he felt so ashamed and embarrassed that there he was sobbing and I was not crying at all. Of course, I didn't tell him until much later, Ninoy, binigyan ako ng tranquilizer na pala doble nung dating kino. Kanya talagang, parang ang tapang-tapang ko talaga, no tears, nothing. And I'm glad that at least at that time, parang one of us was still able to talk. Maybe it took, I would say, almost a year and a half or close to 2, when we finally accepted the fact that, yes, maybe we have not sinned or have not been as terrible as other people, but let us think of Jesus Christ, who certainly did no wrong, and yet he had to suffer and die for our sins.
I knew early on, and I discovered that there is a God who is just. Na merong isang Panginoon na ibibigay sa atin ang ating kagandahang ginawa at paparusahin tayo sa ating kamaliang nagawa rin. It is because of that faith in my divine Creator that sustained me all these years. All I had to do was call for a telephone that was outside my room. All I had to do was pick it up and tell Mr. Marcos, Brad, tapos na, ayos na, I'm throwing the towel.
If Ninoy had gone through maybe just a short time in detention, he would not have become the person that he became.
Before martial law, I believe in God. I mumbled the prayers like any other Catholic in the Philippines. But it was skin deep. You know, more or less superstition yun eh. But when I was brought to Laur, where I had my real great spiritual crisis in Laur, I started from the beginning and I disowned God.
In Ninoy's case, I think it really grew roots, and he really learned from that very difficult experience. But the best thing that happened to both of us, that we really became that much closer to the Lord, and that we believed that whatever happens, the best thing to do is to just entrust yourself and all your problems to the Lord.
So you should not lose faith. You know, this will all come. Magtanim ka at aanihin mo. Gumawa ka ng mabuti, iyo rin. Gumawa ka ng masama, iyo rin. And the Lord said, vengeance is not yours but mine. In His own sweet time, aabutin niyo. That's why, to me, the greatest book that I've discovered here in my imprisonment is the book of Job. Yes. I keep on reading and reading the book of Job because I feel that this is where the Lord taught mankind how to take adversity and vicissitudes. Diyan ka masusubok. And it's really very enlightening. And yet, kung hindi ka mabibilanggo, hindi mo ma-appreciate eh. You'll never really appreciate. I've read the Bible when I was out, but I really never appreciated it until I got in. And for which reason, I'm happy na nangyari na ito. Nangyari na eh. Pero I think I'm a better human being now. I can look at problems more objectively.
I was constantly getting reports from Manila. Reports talked about possible assassination plots. One report said they won't let me land in Manila. I was so worried. Kinabahan ako, so I prayed. The ground personnel of the airlines gave me and my passport a long and suspicious look. Naku, ito na, sabi ko, dali na ako. Nakahinga ako talaga when they gave me a boarding pass and sent me away.
Cory, wala tayong chance dito. This is martial law. And only one man makes the laws. They wanted me to fix deep in my mind that this is a no-win situation.
Many witnesses were painted before me. I never saw them in my life. And yet they were pointing fingers at me, accusing me of crimes I never committed. They admitted to crimes. They said they were communists. They said they were number 3 in the communist hierarchy. And yet the government set them free, and I was in jail.
Senator Tañada told me, alam mo, Cory, dahil ayaw mag-participate ni Ninoy, he can be sentenced right then and there, and there's nothing we can do. Because if he does not want to participate, then that means he's not going to object to whatever.
I went on a hunger strike as a protest to what they did to me in the military commission. But more than a symbolic protest, I must admit I had a death wish. I wanted to die.
He was saying, if I go, then my suffering will end, and that is my prayer. But if I don't go, then that means Jesus wants me to do something more. And I said, well, think of it that way, because I really didn't want him to have a death wish. So this is what happened for 40 days and 40 nights.
I know what it is to go on hunger strike. On the 10th day, my friend, your stomach will actually be only a handful. I know what it means. The hunger pains that you go on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th day. I know the cramps in the stomach. I know when your hands start trembling and you feel cold because the fat in your body is wasting away.
On his 30th day, Cardinal Sin came, administered the last sacrament to Ninoy. It was a very moving thing. And at a certain point, Ninoy's tears were just flowing. And it was, later on, I asked Ninoy how he felt, and he said, he really felt so good. He felt that he had made peace with the Lord and that he was prepared to go. And I said, no, don't think of it that way.
And so I went on until I lost about 40 pounds. From 163, I dropped to about 127. And then I was rushed to the hospital. My mother cried, and my wife, naturally, and my children, but I was determined. I felt that I've served a full life and it was time to go. But somehow on the 40th day, I was struck by that letter of Father de la Costa to me. And he said, do you think by trying to die you are being courageous? He said, you're not being courageous, you're a coward. It is more courageous to go on living. You're opting out. You're escaping. And it's an act of cowardice. To continue living and to continue fighting. He said, it's more courageous. And ultimately he said, if you believe in the divine will, do not interfere with his will. Let his will be done.
When I arrived in Taipei, I switched to my Marshal Bonifacio passport. Alam naman ninyo, Marshal was for martial law at saka yung Bonifacio para sa Fort Bonifacio kung saan ako nakulong. Except for the Taiwan visa and the fake Manila departure stamp, all the passport pages were clean. Kinwestiyon ako. I told him, walang direct flight to Taipei kaya dumaan pa ako sa Hong Kong. I must have convinced him enough for him to let me go.
Now, if he says that he wants to come back here, sure, by all means, he can come back. But for what? He has to face up to the facts of life.
I will go back because I think I'm innocent. And if Mr. Marcos would like to shoot me on that basis, so be it.
Benigno S. Aquino Jr. This commission sentences each one of you to suffer the penalty of death by firing squad.
You can end a man, you can imprison his body, but you cannot imprison his soul. And as long as man will refuse to be defeated, you are never defeated. And so Mr. Marcos can imprison my body, but my spirit shall soar.
He was going to continue arguing against the dictatorship, and that he hoped that he would be able to influence others, especially the people, to do the same thing. That's why I think he ran for the batasan in 1978, even if the odds were against him. He wanted to have the opportunity to again talk before the people. Unfortunately, he was only given one television interview in 1978 on Face the Nation.
All I ask Mr. Marcos is, send me before an impartial tribunal, not a military officer.
By making a statement such as that, you're really questioning the integrity of all these men?
No, it is the circumstance, Ronnie. Kamukha mo, empleyado ka ng NMPC, maataking ba si Marcos? Ba hindi pwede?
No.
Ay, na nga eh.
I will not attack the president. I have no quarrel with him.
Na nga eh.
It was one of his most memorable interviews, and I understand that at that time, most Filipinos were just glued to their television sets. And the streets were rather empty because people were watching, on television. So I told him that, and many others told him that. So if only for that one television interview, he felt he had already decided right in running for the batasan.
I heard none of the noise barrage from my cell in Fort Bonifacio. But Cory told me it spread like wildfire in Metro Manila. Sa wakas, nagpakita na ng galit ang mga Pinoy. Ang galing talaga ng mga taga-UP. Sabi nila, your votes may not be counted, but your noise will be heard. Natakot tuloy si Marcos, so he had to make sure KBL would win by a landslide. Part of the plan was to gather members of the foreign press to join me in this last leg of my journey. They would serve as a foil, para na ring bodyguards. And their presence might just deter any evil plot. At kung may mangyaring masama sa akin, they would let the whole world know.
you have to be very ready with your hand camera because this action can become very fast.
Yes.
In a matter of 3-4 minutes, it could be all over, you know. And I may not be able to talk to you again after this. Now, I am taking some precaution. I have my bulletproof vest, hoping that that would be some kind of a protection. But if they hit me in the head, there's nothing we can do there. I can only be protected from here to here. You see, this is the latest bulletproof vest that I will be wearing. You know, this Kevlar on top here to protect this, and then a back part on this side. But as I said, this is only good for the body, but in the head, there's nothing else we can do. So,
He is not that important. It's only the Western press that is making him important. I don't know why.
But I knew that somehow I will regain my freedom. Maybe not in this world, but elsewhere. And I knew that sometime, somewhere, Mr. Marcos and I will meet. And in that meeting, I will have my satisfaction.
When the members of the foreign press have left my room, I felt the exhaustion. I was just so tired, so drained. If Marcos would take me back to my prison cell as soon as my plane lands in Manila, I would not even mind, so I can rest, even for a while.
Then on March 19 of 1980, every day they brought me out to exercise. As I was walking around my little corral, all of a sudden I developed a chest pain. On May 5, 1980, almost midnight, they took me from my cell and they brought me to the heart center. That was a Monday. The doctors at the heart center met me, took preliminary tests, and they told me, Senator, they said, tomorrow we will begin the battery of tests. And so I slept, but I could not sleep. That was the first time I was brought out of my cell in almost 7 years and 7 months. And there were beautiful nurses, and the first time I was seeing women in 7 years and 7 months. And naturally, I was watching my heart as it was palpitating. And so I woke up at 6 o'clock that following morning on a Tuesday, and they brought me down for my x-ray, and they brought me back. And there were these beautiful nurses around, and they say, "Oh, Senator, ikang ganon. Nangayayat po pala kayo." Ako, thank you. You know, I used to be very big. But as I sat down after that x-ray, I was just about to sip my coffee. All of a sudden, I got hit again by a terrible chest pain that was almost choking me, and my arm was getting paralyzed. So I told the nurse, I said, "Miss, please bring me to bed." So they brought me to bed, and they put all of those gadgets. And all of a sudden, the needles were squiggling. And they called the doctor. The doctor looked at the tracings, and then after 1 hour, they came back to me and said, "Mr. Senator, we are canceling all tests." I said, "Why?" "Because we already know what's wrong with you." I said, "What's wrong with me?" "You have blocked arteries, and you must undergo an emergency triple bypass, otherwise, you may die in 6 days to 6 months. I said, "Doctor, pagpaliban mo na ka ako. Thank you na lang." I said, "If they cannot operate on me in America, then bring me back to my cell." The truth is, I did not want them to touch me in Manila. And so I wrote my letter to Mr. Marcos and made 2 covenants. That if I leave, I shall return. And 2, that while in America, I shall not speak out against his regime. And I also said, I will only bring 3 of my children with me. That's also true. But of course, the other 2 were already abroad. All of a sudden, on Thursday morning, May 8, my wife visited me early in the morning, and she told me, the hospital is crawling with Metrocom cars. Guards all over the place. Baka kami magbibisita sa'yo. Then all of a sudden, my guards started jumping, putting their barong Tagalog, hiding all of their guns. I said, tama, may darating na VIP. And then lo and behold, the beautiful one ascended into my suite. She came, and she was really beautiful. She has not aged, and she sat down and said, "Naku, Ninoy," sabi niya, "I'm sorry to see you like that. Hindi ko lang nasabi sa kanya, kayo may kagagawan nito eh. At any rate, I had my bathrobe and I was like this, and she talked to me and we talked to her, and she was very nice about it. And then all of a sudden, after 1 hour, she said, "Would you like to go to America?" Abay ka ko, sure, sure. Oo. Sa tuwa ko, tinanggal ko pa yung aking kwintas, kako anting-anting ko ito, iwanan ko nakakuper dito. Palayasin na niyo ako, pumunta niyo ako sa Amerika. Sabi niya, there's a plane leaving at 6 o'clock. You can be in that plane. Ay kako, thank you. And finally, at 2:30 in the afternoon, they brought me out of my room from the hospital, brought me to my house in a van. I never saw Manila, therefore. They gave me 30 minutes in my house to pack, to take a shower, put me back on the van, bring me to the airport, put me in a 747, and out of the Philippines. On that Monday, May 12, they gave me an arteriogram. At 1 o'clock that day, my Filipino doctor, cardiologist, Dr. Rolando Solis, came and said, Senator, he said, "I'm sorry, but you have to undergo a triple bypass." And so I finished my operation, and I was recuperating. And I cabled Mr. Marcos after my operation. I told him, operation has been successful. However, I developed a pericarditis. My doctors advised me 4 more weeks of convalescence. However, if you feel I should now return to my cell, I shall immediately take the first plane to go back to my cell. A week later, the international press came out with the story. Mr. Marcos extends indefinitely the stay of Aquino in America. On the basis of that report, I wired Harvard University and I said, I am now ready to accept the fellowship that you offered me. And Harvard University extended the invitation again to become a fellow at the Center for International Affairs. And that's the story.
So when we were in California for a month for his recuperation, every night and every day, Filipinos would be coming around. And I was telling can't you just forget about this for a while? And, this is the first time that we're able to have some kind of normalcy in our lives. Let's, just enjoy this. But of course, I guess once out of jail, he is again boss and he has to be just doing his thing and talking to all of these people.
But when I was convalescing, and I was receiving hundreds, thousands of letters from all over the world, America and the Philippines, Filipinos sending me $5 and $10 to help me in my hospitalization, sending me little money, token of money for my fellowship in Harvard. There was one underlying note in all of these letters. We waited for you for 8 years. Will you now abandon us?
That's why I really like Boston. During the first year, he was just so happy there. And in fact, he used to tell so many of our friends, oh, this is paradise. And I never dreamed I could go to Harvard. I refer to those as the 3 happiest years of my married life. He was also helping in the house. And he did a lot of driving. It was really delightful that finally we could say anything that we wanted and that we were having a very peaceful life. He wanted to be where the action was. He was determined to return, but not to lead any fight against Marcos, anything engaged in bloody matters. But he wanted just to have a chance to talk to Marcos and hopefully to convince him that now is the time to return to democracy.
And so I told my wife, much as we have found our peace and our freedom, I will have to return to combat. I woke up at 4 a.m. and said my prayers. Then I phoned Cory. She read to me some passages from the Bible. I spoke to my children one by one. I couldn't hold back my tears.
Then I wrote a letter for all of them. Dear Cory, in a few hours, I shall be embarking on an uncertain fate which may well be the end of a long struggle. I slept well last night for the first time since I left Boston. Maybe because I'm just plain tired, or maybe I'm just really at peace with myself at last. All the things I've told you may be said in one line. I love you. You stood by me in my most trying moments, and there were times I was very hard on you. Early on, I knew I wasn't meant to make money, so I won't be able to leave anything to the children. I did what I did best, which is public service. And I hope our people will understand in time my sacrifices. I realize I've been both stingy with my praise and appreciation for all your efforts. But though unsaid, you know that as far as I'm concerned, you are the best. That's why we have lasted this long. If all goes well, I should be back in my cell before sundown. I'll try to call you tonight if the authorities will allow me. Otherwise, just remember me in your dreams.
If I die, then I die, and there's only one to suffer. So long as you will continue the struggle and carry the torch, then I think we will have a better Philippines. Rather than have one carrying the torch, we'll have many. We should not depend on one man. We should depend on all of us. All of us are expendable in the cause for freedom. And therefore I say, stand up now and be a leader. And when all of us are leaders, we will expedite the cause of freedom.
existed and that we were having a very peaceful life. He wanted to be where the action was.
He was determined to return, but not to lead any fight against Marcos, anything engaged in bloody matters. But he wanted just to have a chance to talk to Marcos and hopefully to convince him that now is the time to return to democracy.
And so I told my wife, much as we have found our peace and our freedom, I will have to return to combat. I woke up at 4 a.m. and said my prayers. Then I phoned Cory. She read to me some passages from the Bible. I spoke to my children one by one. I couldn't hold back my tears. Then I wrote a letter for all of them. Dear Cory, in a few hours, I shall be embarking on an uncertain fate which may well be the end of a long struggle. I slept well last night for the first time since I left Boston. Maybe because I'm just plain tired, or maybe I'm just really at peace with myself at last. All the things I've told you may be said in one line. I love you. You stood by me in my most trying moments, and there were times I was very hard on you. Early on, I knew I wasn't meant to make money, so I won't be able to leave anything to the children. I did what I did best, which is public service. And I hope our people will understand in time my sacrifices. I realize I've been both stingy with my praise and appreciation for all your efforts. But though unsaid, you know that as far as I'm concerned, you are the best. That's why we have lasted this long. If all goes well, I should be back in my cell before sundown. I'll try to call you tonight if the authorities will allow me. Otherwise, just remember me in your dreams. If I die, then I die, and there's only one to suffer. So long as you will continue the struggle and carry the torch, then I think we'll have a better Philippines rather than have one carrying the torch, we'll have many. we should not depend on one man. We should depend on all of us. All of us are expendable in the cause for freedom. And therefore I say, stand up now and be a leader. And when all of us are leaders, we will expedite the cause of freedom.
Hello, everybody, and good evening. I'm going to be your host for tonight. My name is Ria Tanwat Cotrillo. You have just seen The Last Journey of Ninoy, and that was first released in 2009. And I'm sure that you found it was an absolutely moving film. So much so that it was a finalist at the Al Jazeera International Film Festival. It was also a nominee at the New York Film Festival. So following this very powerful film viewing, I invite you now to participate in our panel discussion. So without any further delay, let's get to know our panel members. I'm very, very honored to introduce award-winning filmmaker and advertising director of Go Indie Media, the film's director, Direct June Reyes.
Hi.
Welcome, Direct June. So nice to see you.
Good evening. Nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Ria.
All right. Wait to see you later. Now, our second panelist is the perfect casting fit for the role of Ninoy, of course. Bam Aquino is with us. Bam is the chairperson of Kaya Natin, Movement for Good Governance and Ethical Leadership, which is co-presenting today's activity together with the Ninoy and the Cory Aquino Foundation. Hey, Bam, good to see you. Long time. Okay, we're also delighted to have with us a writer who is in the business of television. I have had the pleasure of working with her. She is an executive creator, a showrunner, a content and communication strategist. Please welcome Ms. Garlic Garcia.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hi,
Okay.
guys. Hi, Bam. Hi, Direct June Ria.
Hi.
It's my fourth time to watch this, and yet I'm still in tears. I'm sure so many people watching this tonight are also in tears. It's the kind of content that really is what we need right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. So let's also welcome right now Erwin Romulo. He was a multi-hyphenate even before that was a thing. So we very much look forward to hearing from this. And I need to take a breath. Writer, editor, film scorer, video director, producer, composer, and newspaper columnist. Erwin, welcome.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you for having me tonight. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. And finally, we look forward to the views of a very talented and driven youth leader with the Junior Bedan Law Circle, who's been doing a lot of community work with jails. Say hello to Christine Balinas. Christine, hi.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I'm really thankful to be part of this program. So thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be part of this.
Yeah, we're going to hear from all of you in just a bit. I can't wait to get to the questions, actually. But before we do that, we have a special treat for all our viewers because we're raffling off 3 tablets, which are perfect for e-learning. So to win, all you need to do is just respond with the correct and accurate answer to my question in the comment section of the Kaya Natin Facebook live stream. Okay, so we have 3 questions. We have 3 tablets. This is the first question. Okay, so gaano katagal nakulong si Ninoy Aquino nung martial law? A, 7 taon at 7 buwan. B, 5 taon at 2 buwan. C, 2 taon at 6 na buwan. So please, a tip, when you type in your answer, please type the correct letter and then the full answer, right? So that you can be included in the list of correct answers. Okay. So here we go, panel discussion. All right. So I think my first question is going to be directed to Bam, right? This film was released back in 2009, and wow, to think that that was 12 years ago, before fake news started to take a hold in the world. How important is this film now, and what is its meaning in 2021 when there seems to be so much historical revisionism?
It's really important, Ria, no? Napakahalaga talaga kasi nabanggit nga ni Garlic kanina, ito yung content na kailangan natin ngayon. No? We need this kind of content. We need more content about our history, about what happened in our recent past and in the years that have passed. Kailangan natin ngayon para labanan talaga yung mga pagbabago, yung pinipilit na baguhin na kasaysayan natin. So, even though the film is old, napaka-current pa rin niya. It's still very refreshing. Marami sa mga pinag-uusapan ni Tito Ninoy, mahalaga pa rin sa panahon natin. So I'm happy to be part of this film, even though that was way back in 2009. That's my daughter. Hi, Rory.
Hello.
And for this generation and her generation, mahalaga na may gantong classic content. No? So it doesn't, Direk, I don't know. It doesn't look like a 13-year-old film. Mukhang napaka-relevant pa rin niya. So congratulations, Direk. And
thank you.
I was just so honored to be part of this film so many years ago.
Yeah, Bam, by the way, did a good job. I was watching it with my daughters, and one of them said, wait, so Bam used to be an actor?
Ria, hindi ako best supporting actor dyan. Best available actor lang. No? The one who was there na pwedeng hatakin ni Direk at any time.
All right, perfect you mentioned Direk, because my next question is really for Direk June, or Kuya June, as we like to call him. Can you talk to us about your inspiration for telling the story in this way? Because it's not a straight up movie. It's not a straight up docu. Ang dami niyang elements. You have, historical footage. You have Tita Cory's interviews. You have the dramatization starring Bam. And then you also have animation even. And oh my gosh, let's not even get into that crazy moving film scoring, because the music was amazing. But especially at the end. But tell us about the process of making this film, Kuya June.
Yeah, well, to begin with, it took me about 2 years, me and Rapa, to get this together until Tita Cory said at one point, game na tayo, we can already proceed with this. No? But the inspiration was really the article of Ken Kashiwahara. I mean, it was to be an inspiring article, because from then I discovered, the route that took Pinoy from Boston to Manila, and I figured maybe that's the narrative spine that I can use to tell his story. Actually, the journey, there's 2 journeys that was running in the film. It was his journey back to Manila and the journey of his life. No, so the craft manship available was that I had to tell these 2 parallel stories to make the story of his life more interesting. And of course, I had the privilege of interviewing Tita Cory. No, in fact, that was one of the last interviews she gave. And unfortunately too, at some point, tinatanong niya sa akin kung tapos na ba yung pelikula. So she wasn't able to see it till the final end.
Right. Thank you for that. Okay, Garlic, let's go to you. Now, you're someone who really has sort of like a very good read on the pulse of the Philippine audience, right? And you know how to capture the hearts and minds of Filipino viewers. What about this film especially stood out for you?
Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Ria, for your question. Joke. As a content creator, what really stands out for this with this film is really its message. I think the timelessness of the message. I watched this in 2009. I was invited by one of my best friends, Mel Lozano, who worked on the film. And I was in the cinema in Rockwell, and I was in tears. And all I felt at that time, which I'm sure so many of the viewers are feeling right now, this message needs to be heard. This film needs to be watched by every single Filipino. So what did I do? In 2009, I hosted 2 special screenings just for family and friends, rented out the cinema in Rockwell twice, just to make sure that more Filipinos got to watch it. At the end of the day, I mean, it's all online now. I'm hoping that every single Filipino that's watching this now can spread the word, because at the end of the day, this is more than just a story. It's more than just fiction. It's a real story, and we need to make sure that the right story is told right, that it's not revised, that the narrative doesn't change by whoever, that this is the truth. And I think what makes this story stand out so much, more than just the last interview or Cory, or more than just exceptional interweaving of history, it's really because it's the truth. Truth resonates, and it's the message it carries, that in 2009 to 2021, 2021 now, it's even more important. With 67 billion missing, and that's, can't be accounted for, all the more we need to be touched, moved, and inspired by this kind of content.
Absolutely. Something that I noticed in one of the speeches of Ninoy, he mentioned 48 million Filipinos. Sabi ko, wow, that's how few Filipinos there were back in the day. Now there's 109 million of us. So that gives you an idea of how many people need to hear this story, right? So Erwin, in the film, this was obviously a lot about the 70s and the 80s. Talk to us a little bit about how much Filipino society has changed, and possibly how much it's stayed the same.
Well, I'd even like to go even further. I mean, just taking off from Garlic's point, I think, and this question, basically, the story of Ninoy, and as told beautifully in this film, is a story of Rizal. I mean, this kind of narrative, the Jesus Christ narrative, the martyr, really resonates with Filipinos, and I think not only to Filipinos. So, yeah, so it recurs. And if you're asking about what's happened since then, well, I don't need to tell you that. I mean, it's obvious what's been happening over then. But it's something like a historian like Ambef Ocampo keeps painstakingly always says, it's not because it's not that history repeats itself. It's we who repeat history. So that's why it's important to keep telling stories that we should be reminded of. So at least if we're going to repeat it ourselves, then at least let's repeat better history than history that's, that we don't want to repeat again.
Absolutely. Okay, Christine, you are our youngest panelist this evening. And as a young person, I'm sure that when you say Aquino, what comes into the minds of young people is Pinoy rather than Senator Ninoy. Tell us about how this film lands on you and people your age, and what was your main takeaway from it?
Okay, so, for me, as someone who just learned about Senator Ninoy from the textbooks, I can say that upon watching the film, there are a lot of things that are new to me. And I start to realize also na totoo nga na hindi lahat nakasulat sa libro. At kung nakatalaman, hindi ito laging tama at hindi ito laging makatotohanan. Kaya naman, this film, aside from being so enlightened, the enlightenment na binibigay sa amin, it's also very inspiring for me. Kasi imagine, according to the film, 17-year-old Senator Ninoy Aquino volunteered to go to cover the South Korean War in 1950. Imagine, 17 years old. So, parang nakita ko din kasi yung picture. So, yung picture po kasi ni Senator Ninoy Aquino na yung naka-feature po sa Manila Times, yun din po kasi yung picture na nakahang sa wall sa isa sa building sa San Beda, dun po sa school. So, parang I'm familiar with the picture, but I'm not aware na parang yung headline po doon na Times Man in South Korea, Bedan product. So personally, as a fellow Bedan, it inspires me a lot. Kasi Senator Ninoy is a proof that ever since, Bedans really answer to the Clarion's call, not just for our school in San Beda, but also for our country and for our God. And most importantly, when looking back at the life of Senator Ninoy, it is very inspiring and it gives hope to the and light to the young Filipinos. Kasi it gives a message na may magagawa ang kabataan. It sends a message that, hey, we may be young with no right to vote until we are 18, just like Senator Ninoy, 17 years old during that time. But our age should never restrict our moral obligation to speak and take actions in behalf of our future. Because sabi nga, we are the seeds of today and the flowers of tomorrow. We are the youth of today and the leaders of tomorrow. And we really should engage ourselves with social issues and challenges that besets our country, because this is definitely the same Philippines our children and our children's children will inhabit in the future. Maraming salamat.
Beautifully said. Thank you for that, Christine. By the way, for everybody watching, we really encourage you guys, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat if you're on the Kaya Natin PH Facebook page, right? Because of course we want to get to your questions and have them answered if possible by our panelists. Okay, so that was our first round of questions. Thanks for that, guys. But now it's time for our second question. So to give our viewers another opportunity for an e-learning tablet, we're giving away 3. Okay, so be ready to type your answer in the comment section. Okay, here's the question, guys. Ayon kay President Cory, ang pinakamasayang taon na kanilang marriage at family life ay sa Amerika. So, saan sila nakatira bago umuwi si Ninoy para harapin ang kanyang tadhanang mamatay para sa demokrasya, right? Where did they live in the US? A, Boston, B, Los Angeles, C, New York. Once again, when you type in the answer, please be sure to write the correct letter followed by the actual word of the answer. Good luck, guys. Okay. Now, let's go back to Direct June. When you talk about the Aquino family, you really can't tell one story. There's so many stories. And sa films, uso ngayon yung mga trilogy, right? So, what are your... Because this is Ninoy's chapter, right? There's a Cory chapter, the Pinoy chapter. Is there anything at all in the works, for us to be able to tell their stories, Cory and Pinoy?
Well, as far as Tita Cory is concerned, I think the book of Rapa, the To Live Another Day, To Love Another Day, I think is a good source of material to tell the story of Tita Cory, because I think it was written beautifully. And of course, Pinoy being Pinoy, we had a history of having shot a lot of his films for the elections, and my relationship with him will provide me a good, hopefully, another chance to build the trilogy and complete the story for the 3 people.
Wow, that is something we would really look forward to. And hey, you're so close to the sources, right? So I think that's incredible. But if you were to do that, Direk, would you tell it? I mean, how would your narrative go? You think, would you tell it in the same manner you did for this first film? What are your ideas?
Well, it has to be retold in another way. I mean, the format should be, I think, different for each story. And that would be determined later on, but obviously it has to be told in a different format. Yeah.
Okay, I hate to put you on the spot, but is there a timeline for this?
Well, nandiyan si Bam, so we'll see how we'll try and put this together.
Okay, we're gonna look forward to that, and maybe we'll all come together again on a Facebook like this to talk about it, right? Okay, Garlic, as I mentioned earlier, you're a writer, you're a content strategist for some very, very popular shows. What is your advice to anybody who's creating a historical piece today? And it's the Philippines, we love showbiz, we love a little over dramatization. How do you balance entertainment and historical significance?
Great question, Ria. At the end of the day, I mean, when we create, I think the most important thing is that when you create, it's truthful. And especially with a historical piece, how do you balance entertainment? How do you balance fiction, creative license to modify some things? You don't. You stick to the truth and you package it in a way and interweave the storytelling in such a way that it resonates with everyone. The end of the day, when we create content, it's so important to create content with purpose. And I challenge every single person that's in the creative space, or any producer, writer, director, filmmaker. We need more content with purpose, and this one is really just mind-blowingly um, impactful for the Filipino, for the country, and it's the kind of content that we should be making. So I'm excited for your trilogy, Direct June.
No pressure at all, Direct. No.
no.
But like, we're not obviously, it's 2021. We're not talking about just a film space anymore. What are your tips for content creators who are on social media? Because if you think about it, everybody's a content creator these days, right? How do we make an impact?
Yes, thank you. So, well, I basically have 20 years of broadcast television background, and now I had content for in the digital space. So I think it's so important that we are able to adjust to all the platforms and to talk to the audiences of each platform. So if you go on TikTok, it's a younger demographic. If you go on Facebook, it's an older demographic. I mean, it's all these things. So being able to talk to the audience of the specific platform and to repackage it in a way that's appealing to them. And of course, we stay away from anything that's sensational. It's really just sticking to the truth and finding, kumbaga, yung kiliti nila of what will resonate with them, what's real to them, and also capitalizing on universal themes. Like, for example, this specific piece of content, first universal theme, it's really written all over. It's love. It's the love of a man for his wife. It's the love of a wife for the husband. It's the love of a man for his country, for his God, for his children. It resonates, and every single Filipino can always relate to that. It's also about creating content that's relatable.
Beautiful. And, we're talking about social media, and then we're talking about young people. So, Christine, you in your work, you've actually worked, with people in jails because you volunteer in city jails. And as we saw in the film, being in prison had a profound transformative effect on Ninoy Aquino. Do you think this is something that is unique to him, or is it something that you've also been able to observe in the people that you've worked with?
Okay, thank you so much for that question, Ms. Ria. So, for 3 years of volunteering in Lingkod-Laya, I can say that transformation is something that is similar to all persons deprived of liberty inside our jails. Because, sabi nga, liberty is the most comprehensive of rights and the right most valued by a civilized man. Kaya nga po tayong mga freemen, we oftentimes take liberty for granted. At kapag naipagkait na ito sa atin, saka na lang natin nare-realize yung kahalagahan ng tinatawag na kalayaan. Dahil sabi nga, sa madilim at malungkot na selda, kadalasang nag-iingay ang konsensya. And rehabilitation is the most crucial part of criminal justice. Kasi dito po, it is where individuals assess their morals and values with regard to what they did wrong. And unfortunately, we treat prisoners with negative stigma na it is being molded by our classical view of criminal law, in which we focus more on retribution rather than the rehabilitation of our PDLs. And it is detrimental to think kasi it will affect how people internalize rehabilitation, and that PDLs needs hope and incentive to change. And they do not get that hope and incentive when left in a system that only serve to marginalize. That is why people inside our jails needs support. At kaya nga natin biglang bigyan ng kahit na kaunting kakapitan para habang nandun sila sa loob ay alam nila na pagkatapos doon ay may pupuntahan sila. And pag sinabi po kasi nating transformation or pagbabago o pananaw, it can be either good transformation or bad transformation. Kasi nga po yung iba, talagang ginagamit po yung sentence nila to really reflect, rehabilitate, and change the way they perceive things. Meron naman pong iba na kahit paulit-ulit na pong nababalik sa kulungan ay hindi pa rin po nagbabago. So, nakadepende po talaga siya sa tao at sa sistemang kinagisnan niya doon sa loob po. So, with Senator Ninoy naman po, we have seen na he found comfort in God. na according to the film, he really devoted his time not just to read, but to really comprehend and understand the hermeneutics of the Bible, to go the world behind the text of the Bible. And kaya po siya, yung sentence niya, we can see na he really used it to rehabilitate and to transform himself. Kaya because of this, it made him a better person. Kaya nga po, again and again, palagi po namin inuulit sa aming organization na it's important for us to reach out to them. Kasi the more we ignore them and the more we ignore the problem in overpopulation and other challenges in jail, life and liberty becomes more of a privilege than a right. And change is not enough in just focusing in changing the institutional actions, adding paralegal officers, making sure that they have enough paralegal jail officers and BJMP inside the jails. But it is important for us to convey a proper narrative that persons deprived of liberty should still be treated humanely. Because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, a society is judged by how well it treats its most vulnerable members.
Yeah, Bobby,
You know,
did you
Rhea,
want? Yeah.
Yeah, si Christine, yung grupo nila won in the Tayo Awards a couple of years ago, yung San Beda Junior Law Circle. And we were so moved by their story kasi habang gumagawa sila ng volunteer work sa mga preso, marami doon dapat nakalaya na. But because wala silang abogado, they would stay for another year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in jail just because their paperwork wasn't moving. So kumbaga, kung may abogado lang sila, pwede na silang makalaya. And because wala silang abogado, they were still stuck in jail, no? So yung grupo nila, Christine, they would volunteer and they would work on individuals to get them out kasi dapat nakalaya na sila. It was such a moving story, no? And naisip nga namin si Christine kasi yung kwento ni Tito Ninoy sa kulungan, parang napakabigat doon sa kanyang kwento, no? In fact, I always say nga yung kwento niya, kwento ng pagbabago. He went in as one person and he came out as another person. And I think sila Direk June really showed that, no? How there was a deepening in him from that experience, no? Lumalim yung pagmamahal niya sa Diyos, lumalim yung pagmamahal niya sa bayan. In many ways, I think the hero that we celebrate now is a different person from the one who went into jail na kinulong nung 1972. And I think that's a very interesting story kasi yung kwento niya, kwento rin ng pagbabago, no? Which I think is something people can relate to also.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you, Christine and Bam, for highlighting this issue. Now, to really have, I think we all need more compassion in the world. But for now, let me go to Erwin, our multi-hyphenate creative. What is the role now of creatives as what is their role to counteract this historical revisionism that we're seeing so much of? And it's really permeated what I notice where young people are. My kids are on TikTok and they show me some ridiculous videos, right? And I was like, you have to report that. But what can we do? What can creatives do?
I guess I think again creatives can perform the function that Filipino creatives have always done. I mean, I think especially there's a lot of examples. Even again back to the 70s, you had like someone like Pete Lacaba writing a poem under pseudonym, publishing it in a government magazine, 1974. So it was martial law, and the name of the poem was Prometheus Unbound. So basically, it looked like a poem that's basically about the gods, but it was an acrostic. So basically, if you took the first letters of all of the poem, it read there was a secret message, and it said Marcos Hitler Dictator Tuta.
Wow, I need to look that one up.
Yeah. So people like that. So stuff like that. I mean, creatives in every type. Of course, there are many ways of of showing protest. We just saw Tarantadong Calvo do his he gave it online and allowed people to do their own kind of protest. And I think that's from Garlic's point earlier, I think now is the time that with all these platforms that everyone should actually start telling their own stories. I think the only way to counter historical revisionism is for everyone to weigh in. Because what social media has given us and the online platforms is all these stories can be told. And it's nice kasi limang daan ni Ninoy, but I think you can already say a lot of people from that era. That's 20 years of dictatorship. I was telling Bam, I think not too long ago, watching in the previous years, we'd had these documentaries on the Marcos years. I think it's time to tell that period without them already. There's a lot to say. I think we should push them aside and just show what they did. And that's it. I think there's a lot more to unpack there, not just from NCR, but in the other regions, other stories.
Yeah.
So that's what creatives can do wherever they are.
Absolutely. There are many, many untold stories.
Yes.
Which we all need to tell. And you know, the wonderful thing about living in the time that we live in is we all have some kind of platform, right? We all have a way to share a message with the world, really. Okay, Bam. I'm sorry, Garlic, you wanted to say something.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that. I mean, I want to say hello to Cheche Lazaro, my first mentor, who is logged in and watching, who is up in broadcast journalism. If there's one thing I learned from her, I started my career with the Probe Team and I would investigative journalism, but I built a career in entertainment. The most important thing I learned from her, wherever you are, whatever you create it with integrity. With integrity, even in entertainment, create it with integrity. And that's made all the difference, I believe. And for people who want to create anything, a story, a poem, a song, music, a film, it's so important to do it with integrity, and the excellence will follow, and the virality and people watching it, people wanting to pay good money to watch whatever content you'll create will follow.
Thanks for that, Garlic. Very powerful message there. Okay, Bam. As we said, you know, this film is like, it's 11 years old, right? And so when you played Tito Ninoy in the film, you had just turned 30. Tama ba? Am I getting my numbers right? Anyway, basically the messages were getting old. But today, you are exactly the age that Ninoy was when he was incarcerated. And, you know, since you've starred in this film, you've gotten married, you've had your own children, you have become a senator. Can you relate more to Tito Ninoy now?
Well, you know, Ria, when we shot the film, si Direk June basically said, we have a project, can you play your uncle? And I said, do I have to act kasi hindi ako marunong umarte? And he said, no, you just have to stand around and follow my direction and it will be fine, no? So we did the project, and I think, you know, it turned out okay. Although, if you really look at the film, that's a 31 or 32-year-old Bam, no? I'm 44 now, and nag-sync na ako dun sa edad ni Tito Ninoy, no? Because he was actually jailed when he was about 39. Now, it's very hard to imagine. He wasn't even a senator for 5 years. Mas matagal pa akong sa Senado kaysa kay Ninoy Aquino. I mean, can you imagine that, diba? That's so hard to fathom. Ang hirap i-compute sa utak mo. And the time that we see him, he's talking about his hunger strike, he's talking about being jailed. All of those times, that's his age. That's my age now. He was in his mid-40s. And of course, he dies at 50, no, in 1983. And iba yung, when I was playing the role in 2008 or 2009, I was basically just following direct and what to do, no? Pero ngayon, syempre, looking back, it's really a different feeling already because nakita ko na rin what it means to be a father, and I can imagine now how he felt leaving his children behind. No, nakita ko na rin yung pagiging politiko. Malayo pa ako sa politiko nung time that we shot this film, and I can imagine how crazy it would be na on day one you're a senator and then you're in jail for 7 years and 7 months. No, parang napakahirap talaga. So I would say that definitely mas nakaka-relate na ako sa kanya ngayon, definitely, but I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is how young he was. No, gaano siya kabata nung nangyari to sa buhay niya. No, he was a neophyte senator. He was a freshman senator. Hardly even 4 or 5 years in the Senate nung nakulong siya. He comes out of it practically 10 years later, no? Kasi may 7 years and 7 months siyang nakakulong plus 3 years in exile. And he comes out of it and of course dies at 50. So, I think Christine mentioned nakakagulat how young he was when he did all of these things. I think nakakagulat rin how young he was nung kinulong siya and how young he was nung pinatay siya. And that's something I think a lot of young people should also imagine about Ninoy, that he was a young leader. He was a young man when all of these things were happening, when all of these pressures were on him to make decisions for his family, to make decisions for himself. No, he was actually quite a young guy. Edad siya namin ni Erwin, no? Kasi kami ni Erwin and ni Rhea and ni Garlic, actually magkakabatch pala kaming apat, no? So that's our age now, di ba? So ma-imagine mo, ano bang alam mo at 44? Ano bang alam mo at 45? And yet in his case, parang yung buong mundo, no, pasan-pasan niya, parang napakabigat ng sitwasyon na pinasukan talaga niya, especially with a young family. And it just makes me appreciate him more, no? Yung mga pinagdaanan niya and the decision to come home is even parang mas mabigat siya now that I'm a father. No, now that I'm a father, parang mas nakikita ko how difficult it was.
Yeah. Bam, can you talk to us also a little bit about what kind of relationship or memories you had with Tito Ninoy? Because you were only 6 when he passed away, and then 3 years before that, he had moved away. So is there anything you remember about him personally?
None. Honestly, none. Lahat ng moments ko with Tito Ninoy, kwento sa akin ng magulang ko. Because I was 3 when he was exiled sa Amerika. No, but as a baby until 3 years old, yung kwento ng magulang ko is those pictures na nasa Fort Bonifacio sila. I'm probably there in the gilid. Nandun ako sa pinakagilid siguro because yun yung kwento nila na they would bring me to Fort Bonifacio in the weekly visits, no, when they were allowed to see him. And then magjo-joke si Tito Ninoy, iwan nyo na to, iwan nyo tong babing to dito, ganyan. And then of course, iiyak daw ako and everybody would have a laugh na umiiyak ako dun sa Fort Bonifacio. But those were stories told to me. Wala akong memory of him. But, you know, I remember though the day that he died. I remember August 21, 1983. No, my parents were in the airport. My 2 older brothers were in the airport. I was the one left at home because I was really a big 6-year-old, no? At sabi nung nanay ko, delikado yan kapag nagkagulo, hindi yan makakatakbo, hindi ko rin mabubuhat yan kasi malaki akong 6-year-old, no? So, you know, I was left at home and I remember their faces coming home. And that's something grabe. I remember the faces of my folks, of my parents nung umuwi sila. And hindi mo mapinta yung mukha nila when they came home, no? Having just witnessed my dad's brother getting shot, no? So we were talking about it because of course pag August 21 you talk about that time. Yung hindi ko alam na kinuwento ng nanay ko is that when they went home, we actually tried to go to Fort Bonifacio para makita yung katawan niya. But we were actually stopped on the gate. So I think my dad eventually went in and saw the body, but according to my mom, dun na kami sa kotse naghihintay, dun sa labas ng fort, no, habang yung iba nakapasok. So, you know, I remember those times very, very vividly. And of course, after he was shot, nagsimula yung mga protest action. And you guys know that I took part in that. Nagsasalita ako nung bata ako in a lot of these rallies. No? So, even if I didn't know him personally, ang laking bagay niya sa buhay ko. No? And having known him, having known his sacrifice is something I wish more people of my generation also would know about him. Hence itong viewing nitong Last Journey, no, para mas maraming tao makakilala talaga sa kanya.
Yeah, Kuya Jun, I'd like to go to you because I guess out of all of us, you would have the clearest memory of that day. What was August 21, 1983 like for you? Where were you?
Oh, well, I was at home, but, you know, I mean, it was a very shocking experience and a shocking day for all of us. I mean, you were just left actually speechless. No? I mean, you wouldn't know. You know, we need to know what will happen next after that incident. So it was just also, you know, transformative in a way. No, para you begin to think about mangyayari after this. So that's a big impact. No? So I mean, obviously it built up over the years. So, and the impetus to tell the story was actually was sparked because of that assassination. And let me also add, no, as far as Bam is concerned, as far as his acting, galing, you know, I have to commend him because for a non-actor, I just trust me, you know, and then he delivered. I mean, galing ni Bam. I mean, for somebody who hasn't come out in films before.
my first and last acting job ever.
Well,
never.
Yeah.
Well, swerte mo, Bam. You had really one of the best directors in the country there guiding you.
Definitely.
okay, Garlic Kanina, you said that this is a moving film because it's actually a story of love, right? So this question is for everyone. What struck you about the partnership of Ninoy and Cory? So whether or not you're married, you guys please answer this question. As Tita Cory said, what did she say? She said it was not a perfect marriage, but we were one. We were always together. That's what struck me. What about you guys?
Baka nihintay nung asawa ko yung sagot ko dito, Ria, no? Baka nihintay niya. But,
better make it good.
no, ako honestly, and again, when I was shooting the film, di ko to iniisip, but now, having watched it again today after some years and being a family man now or having a family, parang grabe rin yung pinagdaanan ng pamilya, no? I mean, it's such an obvious thing to say, pero even when he was still in public office, yung linya na nung nasa Senate siya, parang wala siyang oras para sa pamilya niya. And then nung nakulong siya, doon siya nagka-oras sa pamilya niya. In some ways, no, it resonates differently now kasi parang ganda din yung feeling ko. Of course, di naman ako nakakulong, pero parang naka-lockdown tayo, di ba? So we spend more time with our families now, no? And parang yung isang reflection ko rin dyan is that this past year and a half is the most I've spent with my children. And iba yung pakiramdam. And yung paghihirap na pinagdaanan nila, no? Having made those decisions which were very difficult, no? Kasi isipin mo, ayaw niya mag-compromise. Therefore, he would have to stay in jail for 7 years and 7 months. One person could say, siguro kung iniisip niya yung pamilya niya, baka dapat nagkompromiso na siya para nandun siya kasama ng asawa niya tsaka mga anak niya. I mean, somebody could of course think that, but the decisions that he made were so difficult also for his family. And in many ways, yung sakripisyo niya, being in jail, coming home, getting killed, parang hindi lang siya eh. It's everybody around him, no? Parang talagang sama-sama sila dun sa mga desisyon na yun. And that really just struck me na parang it's such a hard, napakahirap, no? Napakahirap to make those decisions.
Absolutely. Yes, and to jump in with how Direct June crafted the storytelling, you chose, that's a directorial call, you chose to end with Ninoy Ninoy basically saying the love letter to Cory, the final love letter to Cory. I think that just really encompasses the love of the couple, and I think what made their marriage work, what made their partnership work, because it was more than just a love for each other. They were driven by the same purpose. They were driven by the same goodness. They were driven by the same human spirit that, to live, to exist is far more than just for themselves. And I think that was so touching when Ninoy said, it stayed with me, "You are the best," he told Cory, and that's why we have lasted this long. So I think it also, yung mga asawa dyan, yung mga misis, malaking factor din with what makes marriages work.
Alam mo, I think it's really time for part 2, which is the Tita Cory story. Talagang panahon na direct for part 2.
Yeah. And I also have to give credit to Rapa Lopa, no? Because si Rapa was very instrumental in telling me, why don't we use that love letter to end the story? So we were discussing it kasi of, as we were constructing the film. So I mean, it was Rapa's suggestion that we craft it in as the final statement. No?
One thing about, I was just gonna say, Ria, one thing about the letter and the narration. Ito, sorry po-plugging ko kasi I'm sure nanonood siya. Yung boses ni Ninoy Aquino there is my dad. So, hi Tito Paul. I got a few texts na, sino yung boses na yan? Kuhang-kuha yung pananalita ni Ninoy Aquino. And of course, I was proud to say, actually, tatay ko yan who did the voiceover. And he was really so proud to do it. Isa pa yan direct na walang acting experience, pero I think he nailed it, no? He nailed the narration.
Yeah. Because we needed the voice. Yeah, we needed the voice. I mean, to fill in the narrative. So, of course, we tried Boots Aquino, but Paul's voice was more close to Ninoy.
Yeah, I think I remember kasi si Tito Butch, who of course also passed away already. He's the actor, theater actor siya. So the expectation was siya dapat yung boses ni Tito Ninoy. Pero I think when they tried his voice, because of the smoking, I think coarseness na, may garalgal yung boses niya.
Oh,
So hindi siya pumasa. Medyo rough. So they got my dad to do it, and I think he's quite proud of being part of this. As I am so proud to be part of this film. No, proud kaming mag-ama that we were able to pay homage to Tito Ninoy.
Right. Okay, I mentioned earlier that we're raffling off 3 tablets, right? So now we're actually to our third question. So again, be ready to type in your answers in the comment section of the Kaya Natin FB live stream, okay? And this one's easy, guys. You have a 50% chance of getting it right because it's true or false, tama o mali, right? Si Ninoy Aquino ay may suot na bulletproof vest nung siya'y palabas ng eroplano nung Agosto 21, 1983. A, tama, B, mali. So don't forget to write the answer choice and then the actual word. All right, so good luck. Those 3 tablets, by the way, were donated very generously by Bam Aquino. So thank you for that, Bam. I'm sure the winners will thank you profusely. The winners, by the way, will be picked randomly by a digital comment picker, and they will be announced tomorrow, 12 noon, August 22, on the Kaya Natin Facebook page. Okay, so look out for that tomorrow in case any of you guys actually won. So thank you for that, Bam. Okay, we're almost out of time, but we still have a little time to chat. For you guys, what is the lesson from Ninoy's life that you take to heart in your own life? I know it's such a broad question and it's difficult to answer in a single sentence, but I'd love to hear from all of you on that. What is a lesson from Ninoy's life that you take to heart in your own life?
I'd like to hear from Christine first.
Yeah.
Christine, I'd like to hear from you
Hi.
first.
Okay. Hi again. Good evening. So, as what I've mentioned earlier, as for me, kasi it's my first time watching it, and it's really enlightening as a young people, then as a Filipino, kasi actually and honestly, wala akong idea about what really happened before, and I just based ko ano yung nasa textbook, and I think what's really the message of this film and the life of Senator Ninoy is that sabi nga po ni President Cory din po doon is, it is as if Senator Ninoy, alam niya po yung ginagawa niya. It is as if pinlano niya po talaga yung bawat steps niya sa buhay niya. Kasi he ran as a mayor, as a governor, as a senator. And later on, alam niya po na at that day, August 21, di ba nga po may balita na talagang mayroong assassination group na talagang gagawa nung pangyayari August 21, 1983. Pero tinuloy niya. Kasi naniniwala siya na parang we all have roles to portray and responsibilities to fulfill, and this role is to wake up or gisingin ang mga Pilipino na sa pagiging slave doon sa diktatorya noong panahon na iyon. So I think para sa akin bilang kabataan, this is very helpful, very important, and very powerful na maitatak ulit sa mga kabataan ngayon na we can do something, kagaya ni Ninoy noon na bata pa siya, na we can do something. If we wanted to contribute for our country, we can do something, that it should not restrict, our age should not restrict us in doing what is right, what is just, and in contributing something for the Philippines. Because Philippines may not be a perfect country, but it is wonderful and it is beautiful. And that when you get to visit our country, you will experience the warm 12 wonders of the 7,107 islands, the warmth of our people, the wealth of our culture, and the wonders of our nature, and that we should always be proud as a Filipino. Yun po. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat po at isang mapalayang gabi sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat, Christine. I really love your message. That you are never too young or too old or too anything to make a difference. And it really is all of our responsibility, right? Okay, who'd like to go next?
Hey, I think the message is simply love of country. I mean, that's the main one of the sacrifices that he did. I mean, relentless yung kanyang passion just to help the country. So the love of country is, I guess, to be one of the main messages of Ninoy. No? I mean, that's just talagang he just loved the country. I mean, to the point, of course, he wanted to die for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Gave up unspeakable things, really, no? Especially time with his family for the sake of the nation.
Yes. Actually, if you logged in at the beginning of this entire live stream, it was the first time I saw the interview of Pat Robertson, a preacher of the 700 Club, talking to Ninoy. And it was my first time to hear Ninoy talk about his faith, how he questioned God, how could God allow all of these things. And it was when he was at his weakest, he found himself to be at his strongest. So you hear Ninoy talking about biblical characters, Paul, Job, people who lost everything and yet found the will to live, to survive, to do great things, to have the courage to face insurmountable odds. So sa akin, yun ang nag-resonate sa akin. Parang yun yung pag naiisip ko si Ninoy at kung ano ang pinaka natutunan ko mula kay Ninoy, ay yung hindi mawalan ng pananampalataya, hindi mawalan ng loob sa Diyos, kahit ano pang hinaharap ninyo. And I think that message is so important to every Filipino now with everything we're all going through. Huwag mawalan ng loob, umasa lang tayo sa Diyos at walang susuko.
Amen.
Yeah. Thanks, Gar. Erwin.
Yeah, I guess what I really take from this, it's about the importance of decisions. I mean, I think now we're in lockdown, but it's nothing like what Ninoy went through because he had the option of leaving. Anytime he could have. Let's keep that in mind. He could have always gone out if he had just said, "Tama na to, diba? I want to go back to my family." And I guess even knowing about Christine's story now, I think it's decisions that you want to go and talk to, care for people who are in jail. I think that's basically, I think that's what I take from this story. One of my favorite anecdotes from Ninoy, and I was again telling Bam the other day that I finally found the footage when he was sentenced to death. And he was 3 days before he was 45 years old when he was sentenced to death by a military tribunal. After they gave the sentence, the first thing he says, and he says it out loud, "If Marcos thinks I'm guilty, then I want to be shot tomorrow." Imagine that. So I think that's just about it. I mean, the decision to actually take a stand when you take it in your ways, like Christine has, like Bam has, like Direct June, Garlic, and everyone here has. I think that's what we should take from this story more than anything.
Thanks, Erwin. Bam.
Alam mo, yung August 1, no, we had the 40th day of Pinoy, from his death. And during that commemoration, yung pinaka-theme was "Kayo ang boss ko." And then, of course, Tita Cory became president because of the People Power Revolution. And then this film ends with one of Tito Ninoy's quotes na, "We all need to be leaders. No, we all need to be leaders. If everyone is a leader, we will expedite the cause of freedom." Kung lahat tayo handang maging pinuno, mas mapapabilis yung ating kalayaan. So, makikita mo yung common thread na yun yung kanilang paniniwala sa taong bayan, yung kanilang pananampalataya, their faith, not just in God, pero sa tao, no? Sa kapwa Pilipino nila. And I think, even during the most difficult times, isipin mo, nakulong ka ng napakatagal, naka-exile ka. Nung namatay si Tito Ninoy, di naman niya alam na magkakaroon ng revolusyon, di naman niya alam na mag-aalma yung mga tao, and yet tinuloy pa rin niya yung pag-uwi niya. So there's that faith na sa kaduluduluan ng lahat, yung taong bayan rin yung magsasalba sa mga sarili natin. And I think that's something that is intense, no? Parang intense yung paniniwala nila na kaya ng Pilipino, no? Kaya ng Pilipino ma-resolve yung kanyang sarili mga problema. And I think that's something that's truly inspiring, no? To see people who really believe in us, who are willing to die for us and fight for us. No? Napaka-inspiring nun. And I hope that, we're all inspired to do the same for our fellow Filipinos.
Thanks for that, Bam. I also like when Ninoy said, instead of one carrying the torch, there will be many. Right? And it's totally what we need. Totally what we need. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Can you imagine? More than 500 institutions and individuals supported today's event, ang Limang Daan ni Ninoy. And together, I hope, we were able to tell this story and tell the truth about the love of country and sacrifices of Ninoy Aquino. So thank you to Christine, to Garlic, to Erwin, to Kuya June, to Bam, It's been my honor to be here with you. It's a great way to spend my Saturday afternoon. So thank you. And thank you to everyone online. Everybody keep safe and take care.
Thank you, Ria. Salamat. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Salamat. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo sa 500 ni Ninoy. Mahigit sa 500 na organisasyon, institusyon at individual ang sama-samang inalala ang kwento ng sakripisyo, pagmamahal sa bayan at kabayanihan ni Ninoy Aquino sa live stream ng The Last Journey of Ninoy.